app.
You're listening to ABC Radio.
Your culinary tour of the world continues tonight with a stopover in a country that has one of the most unique and varied cuisines in the world. Ramen, sashimi, tempura, yakitori, gyoza. There are so many delicious Japanese foods to try, but how easy it is to replicate those flavors at home is very hard to say. Tomo Akutsu is a Japanese cooking teacher, and he goes into people's homes and teaches them how to make Japanese food in their own kitchen, and he joins us tonight on ABC Radio. Kaya, Tomo.
Good day.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's such a daunting cuisine for a lot of newcomers to try and attempt. It was actually one of the first things I ever learned to cook, though. It was a Japanese teacher came to my very remote school in the Kimberley, and she taught us a few things: green tea and a few.
Wow.
Yeah. It was back in the very late 80s. But Tomo, can you tell me who taught you how to cook?
Basically, my mom is, because she is a good cook, and when I was a child, I used to help a lot. And also, of course, I used to work at the restaurant, Japanese restaurant. And when I was young, I usually read lots of Japanese comic books, which especially the Oishimbo, which is the gourmet. It says it's talking about Japanese food and culture.
And so, from reading that, you got excited to cook.
Yeah, I remember, I think when I was probably 7 or 8 at the hairdresser, I just grabbed that comic book, and then when I started reading, I couldn't stop reading. And it was, I think the comic book has more than 100 volumes.
Right.
So I read all of them.
About what age did you start cooking?
I think, as far as I remember, probably I just 6.
6, yeah, great.
Yeah. And I remember, I just invite my best friends, probably 3 or 4 my best friends. And then the first one I cook takoyaki, which is like a Japanese street food, like calamari balls. And I didn't know how to cook, but I said to them, let's cook. And that was actually the Western Japanese style, West side, like in Osaka. But I live in Utsunomiya, which is near Tokyo. And so I had no idea. Even my mom had no idea how to cook. Then I started cooking, and the takoyaki batter was not good ratio. I didn't put more water, so it was quite gooey and it's very heavy. So it didn't work. But my friends' feedback too heavy, and then I was so embarrassed, but I never give up, and I just kept trying, and then I learned how to make it, and then next time it was successful, and everybody was happy.
Well, Tomo, we were all entitled to have one disaster. As far as so you had some friends over and tried to cook for them for the first time. When did you get serious about it?
That was probably when I was maybe after a couple of years later. My dad also, he used to cook. He used to take me to fish market, and we got some fresh like tuna or some bonitos and like squid or for sashimi or something like that. And then he used to fillet, and then he cook, and then I was looking, and then I was learning from him. But I think after, 4 or 5 days later, he stopped cooking. he just bought some fresh fish, and then he asked me you should start, filleting and stuff. Now you're ready to go. And then I just, I started, cooking instead of him.
Yeah.
And as well as my mom also, she kept asking me, some cooking to help, and that was I really enjoyed it.
Great, and that's a huge part, is enjoying the actual process. That always leads to a career in the cooking arts. And so now you teach.
Yeah, that's right. I just came to Australia probably nearly 11 years ago. And, as a Japanese, it's, how can I express, some as a Japanese? So one of my passion is, cooking, especially Japanese cooking. So it would be great to share my, Japanese culture with, Australian and have a great time. So that's the main reason.
Speaking of expression, if someone has never eaten Japanese food, which now these days seems nearly impossible, but there would still be people out there. But if not, someone has never eaten Japanese food, where would you suggest they start?
So probably I recommend people who try to have a chicken karaage.
Ooh.
Which is like Japanese fried chicken. I usually say JFC instead of KFC.
I actually had it for lunch today.
Ah, did you?
I did. It's delicious.
Oh.
Karaage chicken, absolutely. It is. Look, it's a safe bet. It's fried chicken. It's gorgeous.
Yes, I think so. And probably Japanese curry or ramen noodle would be nice.
Love a good ramen. For those who have not tried it, you're missing out. Ramen is how important. I'm going to be jumping all over the place here, but ramen is a beautiful dish, especially to exhibit Japanese food. How important is the broth in the ramen as opposed to the noodle?
It's in Japan, we have lots of gallons of flavor of broth. Also, the broth is very important in Japan. We usually say dashi.
Dashi?
Dashi in Japanese, which is a broth, includes some umami. It's a new word, I think. Also, that I believe that is in English as well. We usually use some broth from chicken or like a meat side, like chicken or pork or beef, or some fish from the dried fish or some vegetables. So they are, always a different balance of the broth, and then each restaurant has their own different taste of the broth.
I didn't mean to jump all over the place there, but the minute you said ramen, I got excited. As far as karaage chicken being a great entryway into Japanese food, I guess for people that want to attempt to cook it or have never tried it, what are some of the the most common flavors in Japanese food?
I think that the most common is soy sauce, which is we say shoyu, or some miso, which is both are fermented from the soybean.
Miso miso, a lot of people find it synonymous with the soup that is served. Now, how often is miso incorporated? Like, it's not just a condiment sort of soup at the start of a meal. Is miso a bigger part of the Japanese diet?
Absolutely. Miso is a fermented food. It's like based on soybean, and it's been for a long time. I believe that more than 1,000 years, we, Japanese have been eating the miso and
So, miso and soy are some of the key flavors associated with Japanese food. What would be some of the more common pantry items? What are some of the staples you would find in a Japanese pantry?
Yeah. So probably, as I said, soy sauce, miso, of course, and mirin.
Ooh, what's that?
Which is like a sweet sake.
Okay.
Evening.
The sweet sake, and would that be to cook with or to consume?
Yeah, we usually like add on the soy sauce, mirin, and dashi, which is like a stock, and that is like a balance, like sweetness and saltiness. And most of Japanese food is using soy sauce and mirin.
What about dry products?
We use, for example, sesame seeds, and probably, of course, the wasabi, and some yuzu, which is Japanese citrusy lemon, as a dried zest, and the 7 spices, which is like some chilies and some as a garnish, 7 different types of spices. We just sprinkle on the top.
7 spices as well. Just the basics that get you in there. What about equipment? So we had a list of some of the, and again, for those listening at home, if you have just joined us, I am talking with Tomo Akutsu. He is a Japanese cooking teacher, and we are just talking through the introductory level entry for anyone looking to cook Japanese food. What you'll go through, whether you're looking for the spices, if you've never tried it, if you'd like to try to cook it. Tomo's just joined us here on ABC Radio to try and help you along in the best sort of settings, platforms just to enter into the world of Japanese cooking. And we are about to ask about what equipment would be key. Tomo?
If you cook the normal Japanese, the basic Japanese is we don't need, just basic kitchen tools such as like fry pan, saucepan, the knives, and, like cutting boards. But if you cook some, rice, such as like sushi or kind of, things, we need like a Japanese rice cooker and Japanese sharp knife.
Yeah, how important is the rice cooker? Because I used to think I could just do it in a pot, and then, been very probably corrected that the rice cooker, you live and die by it.
Yeah, I know that, most of people in Australia, they use a saucepan, just 1 cup of rice, 1 cup of water, and they cook on the saucepan. But Japanese rice, if you use like short grain rice, it's a bit different ratio of the water, just a slightly, and also that when you cook, you using a rice cooker, which is quite stable heating and steaming.
And besides the rice cooker and a sharp knife and bowls, so pretty basic sort of stuff.
Yeah, and then chopsticks.
I've actually come across a restaurant that had these very interesting chopsticks that had grips on them.
Yeah,
I thought they were brilliant. I don't know how. Yeah. I don't know. Do you think that's cheating, Tomo?
That's a good for beginner. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm cool with that. If you say it's okay to use chopsticks with grips, I'm going with it. They were really good. So we've got our flavors and we've got our utensils and we are ready to go. Exactly how complicated, because it's so common now and so accessible and the quality's so high, but it's also changed so much in the last few years. How complicated is sushi?
Sushi, yeah. It looks actually simple. Making some sushi rice, and then
what's the difference between sushi rice and what we would normally be accustomed to in Australia?
Okay. So in Australia, when you think about sushi, which is a sushi roll, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But in Japan, when we are thinking about sushi, which is not sushi roll, which is
it's a whole line of different foods, isn't it? It's not just a sushi roll.
Yeah, that's right. And then I just realized, in Australia, probably sushi roll is so handy to, for lunch.
Yeah.
For as a takeaway, and it's pretty handy. But whereas in Japan, sushi is like we say like a nigiri sushi, which is like a small rice bowl with fresh fish on the top. And all sushi chefs make one by one, or scatter, we say chirashi sushi, which is like a sprinkle sushi, like making like a sushi cake. Yeah, or hand roll sushi, which is just make by yourself. So we just serve like a sushi rice, all the ingredients like vegetables or fish or meat, just strips, and then grab the Japanese seaweed, which is nori sheet, and then add on some rice, and then people can whatever you like, just put some ingredients and then hand roll by yourself.
Okay, so it is very meticulous. It's as easy and as accessible as sushi rolls have become in Australia. It is not that simple. It's actually quite a delicate thing to make. What is the difference between sushi and sashimi?
Oh yes, sushi is basically with fresh fish with a sushi rice, which is we say with rice, which is a sushi, and sashimi is just only a piece of fresh fish, such as just a sliced piece of tuna or some kingfish.
Beautiful. So sashimi is a little bit more seafood based, and there was the fear. It was even in the Breakfast Club in the 80s. A lot of people first ever heard of sushi or sashimi, and all you ever really heard of was raw fish, and that was as far as deep as anybody ever went into. It was so much more than that. And we're actually attempting to try, expand people's horizons when it comes to Japanese food, and hopefully we're enlightening you a little bit. Tomo Akutsu is a Japanese cooking teacher, and he's joining us here on ABC Radio. And I'm enjoying this because I'm a huge fan of Japanese food, but I have barely scratched the surface, I feel. Your students, when they come in to learn and cook with you, how many dishes will they learn in, say, one night, one class or something like that? How much will you try to teach them in one class?
Yeah, usually I teach like a two dishes or 3 dishes or advanced course like 5 tapas or kind of thing.
How gyoza is a classic Japanese favorite. Very similar. I mean, they're dumplings, right?
Yeah. Actually, it's difficult to say. We say gyoza.
Gyoza. So I've been butchering that. So there we go. Gyoza is a classic. They're a classic Japanese dumpling. How simple are they to make at home?
Actually, I live. I was born in Utsunomiya City, which is 100 kilometers north of Tokyo, and the city is the most famous gyoza city.
So the best ones come from there, is what you say.
Yeah. So my cooking class is, my gyoza is. It's basically dumpling. Is we make, gyoza pastry, so which is using a flour and water and salt.
Flour, water, and salt, and that's just for the pastry that will go around the dumpling?
Yeah, like, as if you make some, the pizza dough kind of thing. And also that we are making a mixture, which is, the basic one is just pork meat, and the cabbage. It's very finely chopped cabbage.
Is the cabbage seasoned at all before you use it for the dumpling?
Basically, like making, the mixture, which is chopped cabbage and mince and chopped garlic and ginger.
Beautiful.
And sesame oil and oyster sauce, gyoza dumpling.
Yeah, gyoza, and I'll try my best to never butcher that again. Gyoza dumpling. Okay. Tomo, are there many vegetarian or vegan options within Japanese cooking?
Yes, we have a lot of vegan, vegetarian dishes. For example, say seasoned rice, which is like chopped seasonal vegetables, or like a fried tofu and mushroom, mixed with rice. Before we cook into the rice cooker, everything just mixed together, and then with the soy sauce and the mirin and sesame oil kind of things, and then cook in the rice cooker. So that is like a seasoned rice.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned the fried tofu going in there as well. Just reaches another level when you cook it differently. Tofu.
Yeah, we do. We just enjoy itself, or just use for the a miso soup, as I explained before, and even like a deep fried tofu and add on with anything else instead of meat.
Great. No, always a good option there. The tofu is a substitute for people that want to reduce their meat consumption. We've been talking about Japanese food now for nearly half an hour. I've just got myself swept up in it because it is such a fascinating cuisine and something I've always had a close sort of affection for. Japanese chefs, now you're going to have to help me with this, Tomo, because I might be pronouncing it wrong, but Japanese chefs have been reimagining Western dishes and changing them into a Japanese style. It's an art form called yoshiku.
Yes, that's right.
And what are some examples of that?
So my favorite, actually, it's famous yoshoku dish is omurice, or we say omurice.
Omurice.
Yeah, which is omelette rice.
Omelette rice.
Yeah.
Is So, what makes that Western compared to Japanese cooking?
Yeah, that's interesting. Especially this the sauce we call the demi-glace sauce. Actually, Japanese say demi-glace sauce.
Okay.
Which is demi-glace sauce. I think come from France.
Demi-glace.
Yeah, demi-glace. Oh, yeah.
Demi-glace sauce. There we are.
Yeah.
Yes, no, I'm familiar with that, and so that's added to. That sounds delicious. Are there many other examples?
And also we have like ebi fry, which is crumbed prawn.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, with tartar sauce.
And that's been, I never actually thought that would have been a Western food that Japanese, with a Japanese style. I just associated that with tempura and thought that was an approach there. So that's actually been adopted from Western cuisine as well.
Yeah, that's right. So we have like a tempura prawns, but also ebi fry, which is a crumbed prawns as well.
Oh, there you go. Tomo, just before I let you go, are there any famous, because I've already asked you about ramen, that was in the list here. Eventually I asked it ages ago, so I can't ask you any more about ramen. But are there any particular Japanese desserts that are just classic and I've never heard of?
It's actually in just a traditional Japanese dessert is, probably a green tea ice cream.
I do.
And we have like a mochi ice cream. Have you had a mochi before?
I have.
You have, right?
I have, yes.
It's like a sticky rice around the ice cream is inside.
Yeah. Anything that resembles rice pudding, regardless of what country it's in, I will go for it. I'll try it. I have to. It's one of my favorite things is rice pudding.
Yeah.
And yes, that was it caught my eye straight away.
Yes. And probably have you had taiyaki, which is like a Japanese pancake?
I have not. That sounds delicious.
Yeah, which is like shaped like a fish shape, but inside is like you can choose. Like traditionally, we say azuki sweet beans inside, and then outside is like a kind of butter, like pancake butter, and or you can choose like some chocolate cream or some fresh cream inside. And
beautiful. So stuffed pancake, but it's shaped like a fish, as you said.
Yeah, it's like a snapper fish.
But doesn't have any fish taste at all.
No.
Great. that would have been different. I have gone all about the place. We were supposed to end with a dessert question, but one thing I haven't asked you, Tomo, is what does a typical Japanese breakfast look like?
Yes. Nowadays we choose like a Western style and traditional Japanese style. So if I would say that it's traditional Japanese style breakfast, we usually eat steamed rice and miso soup with like a Japanese style omelette or some semi-dried fish, the grilled fish, and I think some people know the natto beans, which is Japanese fermented soybeans. It's quite, I would say like a Japanese Vegemite kind of taste.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there you go. I mean, hey, Vegemite's worked here for breakfast for a very long time. Why wouldn't that work? Tomo Akutsu, thank you so much for joining us on ABC Evenings. We'll hopefully talk to you some other time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
That was Tomo Akutsu. He is a Japanese cooking teacher And he goes into people's homes and teaches them how to make Japanese food in their own kitchen. And we were very lucky to have him join us on ABC Evenings.
Hi, I'm Salua from the ABC, and we're inviting you to be involved in our new project, which takes a deep dive into Australia's deep time. We've decided to capture what we know about our 65,000-year-old history, but we need your help to bring the key cultural finds, events, and stories to the forefront. If your community has local history that you think should be included, we need to hear from you. To express your interest in being a part of Deep Time Australia, email us at deeptime@abc.net.au.
You're listening to ABC Radio.
There was a great chat there with our Japanese chef, Tomo Akutsu, and that has actually brought us to the end of the entire ABC Evenings program. It was a fun one. This is great. I really did enjoy our chat with Peter Rasmussen, the casting director, Tomo Akutsu. Please check out his cooking school if you would like to pick up a few more skills. We have a pretty great show coming up next week. We're going to speak to a Caribbean chef who specializes in cooking for very, very exclusive meals on yachts, water-based. So imagine, being so good at your job, you can work on those mini kitchens that they have in exclusive yachts in the Caribbean. We'll be chatting with a chef whose life is around, and we've got a whole bunch of other stuff. We'll have some regulars, some music, and we will have our, maybe even delve into some underground diggings. But thank you so much for coming and joining us on ABC Evenings. Kaya, please take care. We will see you next week.